Man, I just wish that there was another Left 4 Dead mode with aliens. Hold up. Free weekends for the Anna what?
Yes! Hey, nice work.
Here we go again. Now I'm sure some of you are probably saying, another Left 4 Dead mode with aliens that died on its arrival? What is this, Earthfall 2?
Coming this year. 2!
Well, before we discuss the game in its current state, let's go back 4 years from now. It was a summer morning on June 17th, 2022. I had opened up Steam and received a notification for a free weekend event for a game still in early access called the Anacrusis. And boy, did I not know what I was getting myself into. The Anacrusis is yet another Left 4 Dead inspired co-op shooter, created by, surprisingly, one of the original lead developers of Left 4 Dead, Chet. The game takes place on a space station called the Isolode, where aliens have infested everyone on board, turning their victims into zombies or into other abominations. You've probably already noticed that the game is set in a 60s retro feature setting, and not gonna lie, I really dig it. Experiencing the game's aesthetics feels like drinking that one orange soda that actually doesn't taste like cough syrup. To be more specific, the Fruitiger Metro Fanta. Now let's talk about the characters. They're great. Nessa is technically the leader of the group, mainly because of her past authoritative role on the Isolode. Gian is both the brains and the hair of the group, who usually explains more about the current mission. Lance is some rich guy who owns a bunch of different companies on the Isolode, and Liu, she's just a little goober.
Lance!
Alright, let's talk about the gameplay. This game is very similar to Left 4 Dead, closer than even Back 4 Blood. Get to the next safe room while fighting off hordes of aliens along with familiar but unique special infected. Now as for the pacing, it is really fast paced. Your character moves way faster than you would in Left 4 Dead 2. It's like from the perspective of Ellis on his 4th adrenaline shot. All the levels were designed so well to fit the pacing of the game, especially the finale levels, which I'll discuss later. Oh yeah, let's talk about the special infected. The grabber is simply the smoker from Left 4 Dead, but broken. Then you have the gooper that can shoot goo at survivors, requiring someone else to shoot the goo off. There's also a smoldering variant of the gooper, but I'm sure you can figure out what that does. Now the spawner can spawn turrets. Yes, alien turrets, and they will definitely overwhelm your entire team within seconds. The flasher, yes, that's its name, is pretty much that unused screamer enemy from Left 4 Dead, but can blind you and your teammates in game and in real life. Now I would like to compare the Brute to the tank from Left 4 Dead, but it honestly reminds me of a Hell Knight from Doom Eternal, mainly because of how fast it moves. And you remember the witch, right? Well, of course you do. Well, imagine coming across a bunch of baby versions of her and having to sneak around all of them. Yeah, that idea is what the eggs are. Oh yeah, Chet also brought back the director, the AI that changes the difficulty and item drops based on how you play. Now what really stood out for me was the way how it made the special infected cooperate with each other. The director wouldn't just spawn random enemies to simply overwhelm you, rather it would pair special infected that complement each other's ability. But yeah, those were all the special infected at the time. Or were there? Now let's go over the weapons. At the beginning of each episode, everyone starts off in an airlock with a pistol and 3 primary weapons to choose from. An SMB, your standard spray and pray gun, a blaster, a fast reloading shotgun, and a plasma rifle, slow but high accuracy and range. And those are the only primary weapons in this game. Well, you will be able to find upgraded versions of the primary weapons near the end game, like the Stasis SMB, Sunshot Blaster, and Router, but they were pretty gimmicky and not very effective, unlike the special weapons. The Arc Rifle, the Arc Grenade from Earthfall but it's a gun, the Laser Rifle, and last but not least, a turret that for some reason couldn't be moved once you deploy it, but it does have a cute little cat skin. Even with the Apex weapons, there were still very little firearms to choose from. That's why there's a whole assortment of grenades. Frag Grenade, you toss it and it explodes. The Incendiary Grenade, you toss it to set enemies on fire. Goo Grenade, you toss it to slow enemies down, even light them on fire if you wanna. Shield Grenade, you toss it to protect you and your friends. Vortex Grenade, you toss it to summon a black hole for crowd control. Stasis Grenade. Oh, the Stasis Grenade. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the game. Matter compilers.
Matter compiler!
Matter compiler. Matter compiler.
Everyone, a matter compiler!
These booths randomly spawn throughout each level, granting you all sorts of unique perks that completely change the way you play, like increasing the radius of a grenade's effect, or turning the health booster into an adrenaline shot, or the goo grenade into a healing grenade, or your pistol into a burst fire weapon, or your pulse into a Destiny 2 melee attack. Now what's cool is that you can stack their effects with each other and create all sorts of builds with them. I personally aim for an adrenaline build, where doing something specific grants adrenaline and consecutive kills increases its duration. Seriously, this adds so much replayability. Alright, everything that I've explained so far sounds cool and all, but what about the story? Is it any good? So, like I said before, the game is about a space station called the Isolode, centuries away from Earth, where aliens have infected everyone on board. Now it's up to 4 unlikely survivors to complete tasks assigned by Boris, an AI computer thingy, to learn more about the aliens and how to stop them. There are 3 out of 5 episodes to choose from at the time, episode 4 being released during early access, and 5 being released at launch. Episode 1 is about our team having to retrieve a data card on the Isolode's bridge, while having to take many alternate routes through the living quarters of the ship. The first level is a terminal, which does a really good job at setting the atmosphere of the game, a utopian future that seemed untouchable until disaster struck. The next level is the crew quarters, but as you progress further, you'll start to see areas of the ship destroyed by presumably the aliens.
Oh, this is some serious damage. Let's go up.
Also, the first holdout event in the game is a disco, because the 60s.
Sweet Caroline!
The third level has you climbing an 11-story mall. Yeah, 11 stories, with a pretty confining holdout event on the top floor. Now, the fourth level takes place at a park, and it is aesthetically pleasing.
Trees? This ship has everything.
There's even a segment at the end where you have to run through a field of flowers while being chased by an oncoming horde, and it's pretty intense because you have no cover from being attacked by any of the special infected. Finally, you made it to the bridge, but just like in Left 4 Dead, there is one last holdout event you need to complete. And once you start the download process and see the percentage slowly counting upwards, you know it's gonna be rough.
Get ready.
Let's quickly go over the arena layout. You have 3 jump pads for quick access to the higher ground. You have the lower ground that's really cramped and where the special infected usually tend to hide at. And lastly, you have the middle ground, which is where all the action happens. No, seriously, you'll be facing hordes coming from all directions in this area. But you'll have the most control here since you can see where they're coming from. The worst part is the only weapon charger in the map is in this choke point where most of the aliens will be coming from, so going to recharge your gun could be asking for a death wish. Not only is this holdout event overwhelming, but it's also the longest 5 minutes of your life. Or at least it felt like that for me. I locked in so hard I wasn't shaking my feet under my desk. Even the music started to lose it at one point. Finally, when I heard the data cards finish downloading, I felt my heart skip.
Someone. That's teamwork.
We are doing it.
Episode 2 is about Boris detecting an alien artifact down in maintenance that may help the team learn what exactly the aliens are up to. This episode is only made up of 2 levels, but they are longer in comparison to the levels in episode 1. The first level showcases how the Isolode is maintained by robots and other machinery, but the thing I really want to talk about in this episode is the final level. You finally made it to the alien artifact. Now your job is to bring it all the way back to the jump ship. Here's the catch though, due to radiation, you can only hold it for so long before it gets too hot, forcing you to drop it and have someone else carry it. This is where the fun begins. You and your friends will be playing a game of hot potato through this huge and long haul of endless, and I mean endless hordes. They will not stop spawning until you finish the level. On the bright side, there are magic compilers that you can use, but slowing down just for a few seconds could leave you or your friends vulnerable, a high risk, high reward situation. But after all of that is said and done, episode 2 ends there, and that's when the tone of the game gets serious. Episode 3 is about Boris learning that the aliens are trying to reach Earth by using the ship's deep space traveling system, or whatever it's called. Now this part of the story is a bit dark, to put it simply. The team kind of accepted that they're never going to be rescued, but are willing to help the situation because what else are they going to do? They can neither use the escape pods because they'll never outlive the trip back to Earth, nor could they use the Isolode's traveling system because they'll bring the aliens along with them. So, your mission is to get to the medical bay and send escape pods with information of the aliens back to Earth. Level 1 takes place back at the terminal, but everything's been run down and most of the lights aren't working either. Oh yeah, that's another thing I forgot to mention. There were no flashlights in this game, which made dark sections like this kind of challenging in a way. As you progress further, you start to realize that there is indeed something beyond your knowledge that's been wreaking havoc on the isolo this whole time, and it was kind of hinted at in the previous levels. Moving on, level 1 ends with a tough holdout event back in the crew quarters, which felt like it was painting the rest of the story's setting in a way, mostly on the serious side. Level 2 takes place in the medical bay, where you're immediately thrown into yet another tough holdout event. After the fun ends, the fun actually comes to an end for this level. This is definitely the worst of their level design skills. You enter one empty room, go up a few stairs, repeat until you make it to the airlock. However, they do make up for it in the grand finale. Level 3 is the evacuation center. You start off by having to walk down this long flight of escalators, which builds you up for the room up ahead. There were multiple escape pods you had to transfer data onto and launch, all located on different floors, and my goodness did this feel like a true final test. You had little to no cover from being grabbed or gooed, or from being yeeted off the ledge by a brute, and falling from the top floor would be an instant death. Also, the music gradually adds more layers as you launch every pod. It was only then when I started to take this game way too seriously. After launching 6 of the escape pods, there was one last pod you had to transfer the remaining data onto. The mother pod. This was it, the final holdout event, the final countdown. All the challenges you faced had led up to this moment. There was no rescue coming for you, but nothing stopped you from warning the rest of mankind. And when the data transfer was complete,
It's launched! Let's go!
holy, was that amazing! It didn't even play the outro cutscene, it just ended there with many questions that have left to be answered. Like, where exactly did the aliens come from? What are their true intentions? What will the team do next to stop the ever-growing alien threat? What bizarre aliens will they encounter in the future episodes? But most importantly, what exactly was this unknown creature that's been damaging the isolo this whole time? It was a mystery. Now here you would think this was all the game had to offer so far, but there was more. Weekly challenges. Experience the Anacrusis control with an assortment of modifiers that add a new twist to your run. Like some challenges could only have special weapons and grenades for you to go crazy with, or difficult ones where mad compilers and airlock doors would trigger a horde event. I remember doing a marathon challenge where you had to play all 3 episodes back to back, but one death would cause a full reset. As you would expect, there were some problems with the game. Most of the levels had no sense of direction and were easy to get lost in. It would also get a bit repetitive using the same 3 primary weapons. Now, granted, the game seemed to be more focused on the matter compiler perks and creating a build that fits whatever weapon you're using, but there was still room for improvement. Although the characters were entertaining for the most part, they were all still missing some kind of background, like you didn't know that much about them. Another problem was the game didn't run very well. I mean, it was running on the Unreal Engine, so that wasn't very surprising. Again, this was still in early access. Oh yeah, it was also $30, which was a bit expensive for a game still in development, but it was half off for the free weekend event. Now, despite all these problems, Chet was definitely onto something here, and judging by his devlogs at the time, it sounded like he was playing his cards right. I mean, it looked really promising. The Discord was booming, the player base was booming, Chet would continue to share his plans he had for the future, like new enemies, weapons, game mechanics, a Steam workshop, and a versus mode, which was something that he was hyping up a lot. But until then, I grinded this game. I completed all weekly challenges, completed the season pass, and unlocked all the cosmetics, nameplates, Fortnite emotes, and the rocket launcher, which was just a baby version of the BFG from Doom Eternal. I even made a ball meme to show my support. 2023 was looking bright for the Anacrusis. I'm pretty sure all of us can agree that a lot happened in 2023. But fast forward after Thanksgiving, I got a notification that the Animal Crackers would finally be leaving early access on December 5th. Now, this game was in the back of my head for the majority of 2023, so I was a bit skeptical. So I reinstalled it and waited patiently for the release date. December 5th arrived, and the game was already staying on the store page with mostly negative reviews, and I was like, whoa, hang on, what happens here? So I booted up the game to see it for myself, and do believe me when I say that the state of the game was an Anacrusis! So one of the many problems with the Anaconda was that players didn't want none unless they got guns, so Chet added guns, and he added a lot of guns. They're all surprisingly overpowered, like, really overpowered. If anything, they make the game a lot easier and make matter compilers practically useless. Oh, speaking of which, Chet also thought it was a good idea to reduce the amount of matter compilers that spawn in each episode, the very thing that staged the game. Also, the game runs much worse than when it did back in early access, despite the fact that hordes are smaller than before. Oh, also, the game now supports Steam Workshop. Okay, let's talk about the final episodes. Episode 4 is about the team having to prevent the aliens from using the Isolode's deep space traveling system to reach Earth. Most of the ship's power is gone, so players must use flashlights to find their way through the dark. Okay, new element to the gameplay. Great start. I thought this would be the rising action for the climax that's about to happen in episode 5, but it wasn't. Not even close. Mainly because of the boring level design. It's just one empty hallway after another empty hallway, then one empty room after another, and the finale felt boring as well. Now as for episode 5, oh dear. Episode 5 is meant to capture the intensity of the previous episodes and stuff it all into one level, which sounds pretty cool. I mean, this is the grand conclusion to both the story and the game after all, but it still suffers from the same problems like episode 4. It's just one big empty room after another big empty room. It's almost as if this level was designed for something completely different. Oh, duh. Because it was! This level in general wasn't made to be episode 5, rather it was made solely to show off the new versus mode, but then they thought it would be a good idea to just have it be the grand finale. Like, what? The best way to get people to want to play different game modes is to make sure the actual game is good itself. That's why Left 4 Dead 2 Versus is still booming. Do I really need to use an example of a game that failed this tactic? Okay, so the gameplay was a bit of a letdown, but what about the story? How does it end? They were definitely onto something with the storytelling in the previous episodes, and with the way how episode 3 ended, they did have a lot more in store for the lore. Alright, enough build up, let's finally talk about the long-awaited grand conclusion to the Anacrusis. It's about them getting corn dogs. So they go to this academy in the Isolode owned by Lance because it just so happens to have a single corn dog vending machine. But as soon as they get them, it somehow triggers the Isolode self-destruct sequence and they have to run across a resemblance of a stadium and they escape and the game ends there. Oh yeah, remember that one big alien that we haven't discovered yet? Well, it was never explained. They never went back to it. Probably died after the Isolode blew up. However, there was one thing, and one thing only they answered. You see, throughout the story, each member of the team had their own sayings, like Gianna would say, okay. Lance would say, smackers. Nessa would sarcastically say, of course.
This bridge is out. Of course.
But there was one character that left the entire player base pondering. What did Liu say? Well, in episode 5, we finally get our answer.
I checked the maps. There is another jump ship on the other side of this field, but we have to hurry.
She did not! Yeah, game got backlash so hard they dropped the price to $10. Now as for what the rest of the game has to offer, there's a holdout mode where you have to survive 5 waves with a Mr. Brute boss at the end. Yeah, it's nothing special really. They also added a difficulty configuration system where you can change how often things spawn, like better compilers, weapons, but it completely removes what makes the director special. I mean, like, wasn't it supposed to understand how you play and continuously change the difficulty based on that? And last but not least, there's Versus mode, which I would have really liked to talk about, but in order to experience what Versus has to offer, you need to have players. Yeah, to put it simply, it was not looking too good. Now I'm sure some of you are probably wondering now, is it over? Is this the end of the Anacrusis? Well... Yeah, it's definitely over. It was not too long until they stopped doing the official updates and are now relying on the community-made updates from the Discord. And unfortunately, they too think that adding more weapons and grenades and enemy reskins, enemy variants will make the game better. It's really strange how Chet lowering the price to $10 made me less inclined to recommend this game to anyone else. I mean, everything that this game does, Left 4 Dead 2 does better. And with everything Earthfall is lacking in, even that feels more of a completed game than this. Like, I kind of feel guilty for talking bad about this game. Okay, I'll be honest, it wasn't perfect, it wasn't amazing back in early access, but it was great. There was something to be enjoyed there. There was a foundation. Or at least I thought there was a foundation. Now, Chet did explain that he wasn't entirely focused on difficulty, but rather trying to create some kind of randomness by adding an assortment of weapons.
The other thing that we wanted to do in the single slash co-op is have it be spectacle. So not be about difficulty, but about just like you going like, oh my god, what just happened? Like there's so much stuff going on, and it's just special effects and crazy grenades and all kinds of stuff. We have some of that in the base game. The community update really delivers that all the way, where you are just sometimes almost confused if you're not the one who did it. And I kind of like that. I wanted to have that mayhem and that chaos of that experience.
But the way it was presented was very boring. Also, the game did have the randomness he was looking for, and it all came from both the director and Matter compilers. Had he focused more on a system where Matter compilers can upgrade and change your whole arsenal and make the director try to counter your advances through environmental hazards and special infected, the game would have done better. And ever wondered why the game is called the Anacrusis? Well, it's actually the name of the ship that our protagonists live on. Not the jump ship, but the ship that's only ever been acknowledged on the title screen. That was never mentioned or explored, let alone had any relevance to the story. Now, I personally don't believe that Chet is the type of person who would just simply release an incompleted game and say, "Oh, I did my best." So one could assume that something did happen behind the scenes. However, I don't believe that finding out myself is any of my business. In conclusion, as someone who's been playing this game since early access, I can say that it was really sad for me to see this game go from something to nothing. And I am genuinely sorry. The end.